episode of Erased, Satoru Fujinuma claims his greatest treasure and officially transcends into a true hero. The final scene of the last episode of Erased honestly made me cry a little bit. It was such an amazingly beautiful reunion between two really awesome characters. Before I go any further in this review, just know that there are going to be some massive spoilers about the entire series, so if you have not watched the final episode of Erased, please go do so now and then come back to this review. This week's episode completely wrapped up everything. We got our final confrontation between Satoru Fujinuma and Yashiro, the kidnapping killer. We also get a very heartfelt reunion between Satoru and all of his friends now that they're a little bit older, a little bit wiser, and a little bit drunker. And of course, at the very end of the episode, Satoru goes to his old hiding place and ends up seeing a familiar face from another time. But before we get there, let's talk about that confrontation between Satoru Fujinuma and Yashiro. At the end of last week's episode, Yashiro and Satoru ended up going to the rooftop of this hospital where presumably Yashiro was going to finish the job and kill Satoru Fujinuma. However, Satoru has other plans and a few plot twists as well, because he finally starts to get into the head of Yashiro, and he does this by basically sort of manipulating him into making it seem like the relationship is very similar to, say, Batman and the Joker. One can't live without the other. Yashiro, the only reason he continues to live and do his thing is because he's been waiting for Satoru to come back and he cannot have him die. Basically, he has filled the hole in his heart. This combined with some of the amazing imagery here is just great, especially the scene of the spider web, which is right behind them, hanging out, and then as Satoru is just sort of slowly wheeling around and revealing his plan, you can actually see a spider thread right above his head, and he is not going to allow Yashiro to have any of the satisfaction of killing him, so he starts to just rev up his wheelchair and go over the side so that he can kill himself. But before he can fall, Yashiro decides to grab him, and that's when he is completely conflicted. He doesn't know whether to let him live or let him die. If he lets him live, everything's going to be fine. If he gets killed, he has absolutely nothing left to live for, so he actually lets him go, and the viewers are originally led to believe that this is the death of Satoru Fujinuma. At this point, Yashiro decides that he's going to commit suicide and jump over the side, and then when he looks down, he realizes that all of Satoru's friends and his mom actually have like this giant cushion air balloon that they have brought out so that he can land on, and this is when they find out who the real killer is. The reason it's so satisfying is because Satoru and all of his friends have witnessed all of these events, they know exactly who the killer is, and Yashiro himself also realizes that he's completely screwed. He's been caught, attempted murder, he is going to jail. I especially love the scene where you see the spider thread above his head slowly disappearing. So this is the end of Yashiro. He has officially been caught, and Satoru is the hero. The rest of the episode is basically just sort of tying up a lot of the loose ends of the series. Satoru finally leaves the hospital, he decides to become a manga artist, a very successful one at that, so successful that one of his series have actually been adapted into an anime version. One of his coworkers congratulates him on this fact, and honestly I think this is just sort of a subtle in-joke to the fact that the Erased manga series also got an anime adaptation. Apparently also a live-action adaptation, which has already been released. I didn't even know that freaking happened until like a couple of days ago. Satoru ends up going to visit all of his friends in Hokkaido where they get incredibly drunk and frankly just end up having a really great time together. They reminisce by going back to the old school and remembering all of the old days, and then at the very end of the episode, Satoru goes back to his old hiding place, that one place that is under the bridge. It's snowing, it's somber, and this could have been the final scene right here. It would have been completely satisfying, except that there's still one element that's missing, and that's his friend Irie from the original timeline. Now that things have been altered, he still actually hasn't met her quite yet. And out of the corner of his eye, he sees a blue butterfly, as almost as if revival was about to be triggered. And when he turns around, who does he see but Irie, who takes refuge under the bridge, commenting about the snow, and his reaction to just seeing her is so tears-inducing. And it was perfectly timed, because by the end of this episode, I was even thinking to myself, are they not going to do anything with Irie? Are we not going to see her return? Because technically she doesn't know him in this timeline. No, they ended it in the perfect way, which is totally just going to end up smacking you right in the feels. So what's the rundown on the final episode of Erased? Sunrise, sunset, this was a perfect ending to a pretty damn good anime series. Probably the best one of the season. It's storytelling, it's characters, it's twists and turns, it's got some great sci-fi elements with time travel, and frankly, it's just a great thriller, trying to figure out who the killer is. That being said, the entire series was not perfect. I wanted to learn a little bit more about Yashiro, his motivations, maybe a little bit more about his backstory, but still, I love the final confrontation, especially how Satoru actually manipulated Yashiro into letting him go and tricking him so that everybody could figure out that he was the killer. That was a really great moment for me, and one of the most satisfying moments of the entire series, especially if you've been watching it from beginning to end, and especially if you've only been watching the anime version. I myself have not read the manga version of Erased, but now that I have seen the anime, I think I am going to read the manga just to see the differences and to sort of appreciate it a little bit more, and it'll probably expand on some of the characters. Another thing that I really loved about this episode, of course, was just all of the symbolism, the spider threads at the beginning of the episode, and just all of these smaller moments, like at the end, when he's saying that his greatest treasure was him being in his coma for years and his friends being able to live a happy life. He was also equating this to that one story that Kaio wrote years ago when she was a little girl, and that scene right there, it just again proves that the writing and atmosphere of the series does a really great job of pulling at your heartstrings, and it also just happens to be really well written. On the technical side of things, again, the best way to describe this series is simply atmosphere. It is just bleeding with it, and it is all over the final episode of the series, which I still believe is a pretty satisfying ending. If there's one thing that I would change about the final episode, it's how they would have revealed the twist at the end. How basically they showed you that he met up with his friends and his mom and revealed that his memories were back before he actually went and met Yashiro. I think it would have been better to reveal that afterwards, which would have made that moment a little more shocking when his friends actually were helping him out. Although, I actually thought that he had killed himself at the end of the episode, and I was like, really? That's how they're going to end this series? Man, it has got some balls. And despite the fact that they didn't do that, it was still a pretty satisfying ending at the end of the day. So, really, that's all I have to say about the final episode. Another fantastic episode of Erased, which completely resolves everything in the series and just wraps everything up in a really nice package. This was a fantastically atmospheric and wonderful show that any anime fan should definitely check out at least once. Because I like it, I'm going to give the final episode of the series a 4 out of 5. Not a perfect episode. I still would have liked a few more things to be explained. I wanted to learn a little bit more about some of the characters. That being said, this was a very high-quality episode of a high-quality anime. If I could give the entire series a score, I would also give it a 4 out of 5. It certainly has its flaws, but for the most part, it's very watchable, it's got a lot of great characters, and it's got a story that's really going to suck you in. And so there it is. That is my review of the final episode of Erased. If you guys watched the final episode of the series, please tell me what you thought about it in the comments section below. Were you satisfied from the final confrontation between Satoru and Yashiro? What did you think of the ending in general? And what did you think of the entire series? Please tell me your favorite moments and tell me if you're going to migrate to reading the manga version after this. Make sure to tell me in the comments section below. You guys are awesome! Thank you for watching this review. Make sure to subscribe to the channel, that way you can see all of our latest anime and manga reviews. If you want to see any of my previous reviews of the Erased anime series, there will be a playlist on the channel, so make sure to check that out. You guys can also follow us on social media. There will be links for all that stuff in the description box below. Thank you guys again for watching, and as always, stay dandy, baby!